Hello, you are listening to the Natural Healing Show for UK Health Radio. I'm your host, Catherine Carrigan, medical intuitive healer and Amazon #1 best-selling author. You can find out more about me and my work at catherinecarrigan.com and unlimitedenergynow.com. While you're there, definitely sign up for my newsletter so you can learn even more about how you can heal yourself naturally. Now, our guest today is Alexander Sitch. Alexandra Sitch is an international mediator and life coach and the author of the new book, The Universal Language of Nature, A New Way of Conflict Resolution. Thank you so much for joining us, Alexander Sitch.
Thank you. Thank you so much for creating this space, Catherine.
And Alexander Sitch, the author of The Universal Language of Nature, will you please give our audience your website?
Yes, my website is www.sitchmediation.com.
Okay, so you just published your new book, Alexander Sitch, called The Universal Language of Nature. What is your new book about?
Well, the universal language of nature is about the sessions I'm doing with my clients who've got conflicts. This can be in a team, this can be between people in a relationship, so partners, this can be between a manager and his clients or his partners, colleagues. Everything is possible. We all have conflicts and they can be wonderfully healed by animals, not only by dialogue, but by animals as well. The reason I wrote this book is a little bit because of my inner journey. Maybe I can share with you my inner journey so you understand why I wrote this book and what this book is exactly about. Back in the 80s, right out of school, I started to study European studies, international relations, languages, and conflict resolution. And always loved to switch from one language to the other. I worked in different jobs, in different professional situations to solve conflicts between cultures, between people. There were some great communication jobs in European companies, but also for several teams in insurance companies or between people who are independent. I noticed that conflicts between people and teams could be really solved by dialogue, but there was always something missing in business. The same conflicts research quite often again, because people have inner conflicts. That's very often the problem. The problem is often that people have issues from the past. Everybody has, that's normal. And these issues, these patterns, they take on to the next relationship, to the next situations in their life, their professional situation, but also their private situation. I started to see more and more that intuition plays such an important role. We're all living in a brain-oriented society, but we forget our intuition, our heart energy. And that is where these horses come in. Because one day, I've always been quite brain-oriented, but one day I visited an equine assisted coaching congress, and I noticed how much we can do with animals, with horses. I noticed that during a session, horses come towards you as soon as you're authentic, you're in your authentic power, and they take a distance as soon as you're wearing a mask. You're not really yourself, you're just playing a role. And this is so important in every relationship, that you're authentic, that you're yourself. So horses will show you always what's happening. I saw that this is really a wonderful complement to my practice, not only dialogue. So once people have had a dialogue with each other, they have created lots of goodwill. They have gone from a point of view to the motive of each conflict. Once they've done this verbal part, we go to the non-verbal part, where each person is going to have a session with the horses where horses are walking freely in the pen or in the field, and they show the blind spots or the non-verbal communication or the blockages to that person. And this very often heals and gives answers to the conflict and solutions.
Now, Alexander Sitch, what is the nature of animals and particularly horses in natural healing?
Horses are very independent beings. In nature, we've done lots of studies. You can read them in several, there have been published lots of books about this. They work in principle together in a herd. And they always, that's what they've learned, for the survival of the herd, they will always look if their companion horses, their fellow horses, are really in their authentic power. Each horse has got a mission, a certain task, food, or looking for if everything is safe. And as soon as one horse is not in its authentic power, they will compensate its weakness and communicate also what this horse can do to feel better, to really fulfill his role in this herd. The funny thing is they do the same, these horses, just walking freely with a human being. So as soon as you come into the herd, they will immediately start showing you your blind spots, your non-verbal communication, and they will show you also your wounds from the past, maybe from your system, your parents, maybe from your from past generations. They all have an effect on you, on yourself, emotionally and physically. So this is a great way, really, of solving these issues, and that's also why I wrote this book. Horses are independent creatures. They are not like dogs, that they become very symbiotic. Dogs are very symbiotic. They can help you as well, and they have a certain message to transmit. But they're not like horses, that they will show you in an independent way what's going on in your life, what needs to be seen and to be healed.
So, Alexander Sitch, how do horses specifically reveal our wounds from the past? How do they do that?
They will show that, of course, you've got two ways of doing a session. If I do a simple session about the nonverbal communication of a person, a nonverbal, like a session where we'll see if a person has got connection with himself and others. We work just with one horse, and they will show this person what is his blind spot. What does he not realize? What is happening when he's in connection with others?
Okay. And so my question is, how do horses actually reveal our blind spots and our wounds? Not your method.
Yeah.
How do horses reveal our blind spots and our wounds?
I can give an example. When you've got, for example, somebody who's in a way wearing a mask, is not himself, let's say, is wearing the mask of being, oh, I will handle this, there's no problem at all. And he's not acting from a in a self-centered way, but acting from a mask sort of wearing way. He's wearing a mask of appearing strong. He's not really himself. Then a horse will start to confront him. For example, just start a sort of conflict with him, the way he's holding his head, he will push him. There will be a conflict, and this person will immediately recognize that his way triggers irritation with others around him. So this is a blind spot. Lots of people do not realize. This person could maybe say, oh, I do not feel very sure about this and that, or could you maybe do this and that? This horse will immediately show him what he does not want to see. Another example is boundaries. Very often for women, this is a great issue because this is also affecting your health, your emotional and physical health. A horse will, for example, start cutting off your space. When you're standing in a field, this horse will just walk straight along you and cut off your path. And this will be as long as you are up to a point that you really start to center yourself. And really be in your authentic power. So we do an exercise to be in your authentic power, to fill yourself with self-love. So this horse will start just to calm down and will feel that you've got your space and your boundaries, which are so important in everyday's life, we all know, and in your relationships. So this all
Okay.
has to do with self-love, and the horse will show you.
Okay, so you gave an example that horses will show us how well we are or are not holding our boundaries.
Exactly.
And you said that horses will initiate conflict with us when we're not in our true self. How will a horse react when we are in our true authentic self?
A horse will come towards you. They will make contact with you in a very soft way. You will feel that you've got a certain space. You will not feel, let's say, threatened in a way in your space and in your freedom. Very often, he will just stand next to you. You will just feel it. You cannot explain it. You just have to live it. This horse will just be calm, standing next to you. Will be like a partner should be. And when you are in your authentic power, this horse will reflect this.
So, Alexander Sitch, your original background was in mediation or conflict resolution. Could you explain for our audience the method that you're using with horses? How do you do what you do?
Yes. If, for example, a party's got a conflict, we'll talk now, for example, in a relationship, I also work with couples. We do a session for each person because each person's got his own or her own system, her or his own background, her own upbringing and wounds from this past. So we do a session for both. In both sessions, we'll see what the weak spots are, the blockages are of this person. And these blockages always have something to do with the partner. In this case, I have got a wonderful a chapter in my book I could read to you about this couple. It all
I
goes,
think not. Let's please not read the book, okay? But you can tell us the story, but
of
just
course,
summarize the story if
yes,
you would. Yeah.
yes. What happens is this person, let's say, I would like to describe this session to you. We're talking now about the woman who feels completely disconnected with her partner. There have been lots of discussions. They're in the field together. She is standing there and she sees immediately her children, because that's in fact her issue, the children. She's completely focused on the children. These children are represented by horses. In this case, I worked with more horses. They were far away, they were doing her own thing, just like her children were acting in her life. They were doing their own thing, but she was constantly bothered about these children. She was not focusing on herself or on her husband, but on these children. Interesting thing is, in that field, she was focusing, but they were taking more and more distance from her because she was much too much involved with her children. This is, of course, something which is normal. Everybody needs his own space. As soon as she started to center herself and started to look at herself, filled herself with self-love, a horse started to come towards her, representing her, and she felt this was the way to do it. While she was making connection with her heart, because that's what the basis, the key is to every, let's say, every conflict resolution. As soon as she made that contact, the horse came towards her. She felt she could make, her heart has always been far away. At that moment, she made that contact. This horse was close to her, standing close to her. As soon as this horse felt she'd made this contact, he opened the way to her husband. And that was the interesting thing, the message which she really felt. This is not about understanding with the brain, but feeling that as soon as you really focus also on your own life, on your own heart, only then you can make a connection with your partner or with another person. Otherwise, you will only compensate. This is just a very short description of this session. There was very much happening. the partner, the man himself, her husband, had taken space because of the fact she was so much focused on other things, on the children. As soon as she was more focused on herself, there was again this heart connection, or they had at least the possibility to work on it. And it was magical at the moment. These horses opened the way, once she had made this connection with her heart, opened the way towards her husband. So this is something which you can only feel in a session like this.
Now, Alexander Sitch, what kind of people benefit from this method of conflict resolution?
Well, I had mainly in the beginning, I had mainly people wanting to solve conflicts in teams, in the companies, in relationships. So really conflict resolution. But what it is at the end of the day, and I attract now more and more of such people, is people looking for the freedom to be themselves in their job and in their life. What we see in this time of certain crisis, of insecurity, people are looking for their life path. They're looking, they have got no time to focus on themselves. What are they going to do with their depression, with maybe trauma they have, with anxieties? People now more and more need this discovery of their inner compass to feel stronger, to find their authentic leadership in life. So it's the way I call it. That's the way also horses show you. You need to be authentic. Then you are in your power, and you're also attract the right people. You attract the right situations. That is a sort of law, which is every time confirmed by these sessions. And when I speak to clients afterwards, they feel once they listen to their intuition, their intuition, their gut feeling, their felt sense, that is what you learned during such a session.
Good.
Once they do that, they've got freedom to follow their own path.
Now, Alexander Sitch, how can horses be used for conflict resolution?
For conflict resolution, the horses are always showing where the conflict comes from. So when we put two parties together, the other party does not even need to be there.
Right. And I'm having trouble with your sound right now. So Alexander Sitch, I'm having trouble with
the other person. So it's also possible.
Right. Alexandra Sitch, your internet's just dropped out. So I'm going to speak a little bit while you're okay. And so what we're talking about today is about how horses can be used for conflict resolution. Now, Alexander Sitch, how does your method of working with horses differ from other forms of equine therapy?
Yes. This method works with every question in principle. This always, it works with more horses. We work with horses which walk freely in the pen or in a field, preferably in a field. And this is always about the question of the client. So I adapt myself to the question or issue of my client. And the horses, more of them will always react to what needs to be seen. So it can be depression or anxiety. It's systemic coaching. So working with your system.
Right. And I know many people who use horses for all kinds of things. For example, horses who are used for working with disabled children, horses who are used for working with autistic children. I know a coach who uses horses in relationship coaching to show people how they show up in an intimate partner relationship. I know another coach who uses horses for executive leadership training to teach people how to be the alpha and how to be the leader. Now, so Alexander Sitch, you know, here at the Natural Healing Show, we talk about how we can heal with nature. And many people use dogs, for example. So, for example, a lot of people train their dogs to be therapy dogs, and they take the dogs in all kinds of therapeutic situations to comfort people. why does your system specifically use horses for healing?
Horses are independent beings, and they show immediately, they go right to the essence of your question. I only use horses in their natural environment, and they always work in a natural way with their body language and making contact or not with the client. And they all, in every action, in everything they do, there is a message. And clients always see the answer of their question. As I work a lot with conflict resolution and all sorts of personal issues, they will always go to the essence, to the question behind the question, very often even, and show this in their body language and take the coachee through the coaching process towards a new balance, a new happiness, because that is what counts at the end of the day. Does the person find happiness? Does he find his really true self? Does he find authentic leadership in everything he does? That's the message. And that is what I do with my method. And this can be any issue, trauma, depression, relationship blockages, but we always go back to self-love, authentic leadership, and being yourself. That is what it is, being in balance.
So how does working with horses therapeutically differ from, say, working with dogs or other animals in a healing situation?
Yeah, dogs are wonderful creatures. Sometimes I work with them because they come into my sessions spontaneously. They have something to tell. Very often they've got something to tell about being more playful in your life, being more playful in your job, or they are very symbiotic. To work only with dogs, that's quite difficult. I prefer with horses because they're more independent in their messages and in their way of helping people. But dogs have got a message, birds have got a message, these can be even little pigs, they all have a message. At the moment, when you're doing a session, everything works together. The magic of this is we are all connected with everything, with nature, with animals, and they come in at the moment they are needed. And this can be, I've got a beautiful anecdote about a person who was in my session. She was very depressed. She stood there. She didn't tell me what the matter was. She was quite introverted. At the moment, I asked her what exactly has happened in the past weeks. She started crying. And at that moment, my dog, who was by chance there, walking around there, came into the session next to her, sat right next to her. And I asked her, what is the matter? What is this dog telling you? Well, that's exactly, my dog passed away a week ago.
Oh.
So at that moment, my dog has felt a connection with that dog. Even the deceased come into these sessions and bring you a message if it's necessary. Everything happens at the right moment for a certain reason to heal the person who is the client at that moment.
Right.
So,
that's a beautiful story. And I do agree with you, Alexander Sitch. I think animals are natural healers because they are responding in the moment to our energy. And I know that when I do hands-on healing in my studio, I have a little dog, a Cocker Spaniel, and she's not allowed down with every client. And often I'll talk to the client ahead of time, whether that's appropriate or not. But when I do hands-on healing, she's just a wonderful healer, and she works especially well with little children and teenagers, and often she can form an immediate connection to calm the individual down and to help that person, really enter a state of unconditional love. And
exactly.
I think that dogs are so great at expressing that unconditional love. Now, Alexander Sitch, in the past year, levels of anxiety and depression have quadrupled. And during the coronavirus pandemic, how specifically can working with horses help us to heal anxiety and depression?
Yes, I've got at the moment quite a lot of people asking this question because they've got anxieties, there's so much insecurity. What they do, the horses, they will always go to the source of this anxiety, the source of this depression. And this can be either a blind spot, something systemic from your past, maybe a parent. They will show this parent at that moment with their body language. You will recognize this parent immediately. Maybe this parent told you, you can't do this well enough, you can't handle it. You will see it in this horse. This is for example, my father, and he didn't treat me well. And you have to make a certain balance and peace with your past to be able to get rid of that anxiety. You have to embrace a bit the wounds from your past before you can get on that new path. Healing is essential to be able for being able to pursue your life path and your soul mission. And horses always show you something in your maybe a generation ago. Everybody will recognize which element or who that was, who's given them in a way who's been the source of their anxiety. There are many possibilities, your parents or your grandparents or something, maybe something else. You will see it in the horse, in their body language, yeah.
Okay, so working with horses over the past year, during the coronavirus pandemic and the lockdowns, are there any specific messages that the horses seem to be giving out right now that, you know, are sort of general that we all might benefit from?
Yeah. What they show you at the moment very much is confronting yourself with the fear you have. The fear can be represented by a horse. As soon as you make contact with that fear, you will see that it's an illusion. It's not really there. People realize at the moment they make that contact, it's not as bad as it is. It's just something in my mind which blocks me. So as soon as they embrace this fear, it will go away. And at that moment, the horse will make space. It's interesting. It's all materialization of energy, which people will immediately understand with their felt sense. Every person, even if you don't know horses, you'll just feel that this is something you have to deal with. And it comes up a lot at the moment. This fear, which is represented by the horse, and self-love, heart energy is represented very much by the horse. Making contact with your heart energy is essential for getting rid of your fear. What do you really want? What belongs to you? In these times of crisis, what fits you? What is your truth? And what makes you feel better? What is your passion? That is what horses also tell you. And they will go towards your heart. They will even touch your belly or your heart at the moment. You have to make contact with it. And this comes up quite often at the moment. These times are really there to be authentic, to go really back to yourself or find yourself, your real true self.
Beautiful message. Now, Alexander Sitch, another challenge that we've all faced during these times of lockdown, whether you're in France like you are, or the Netherlands like you are, or in the States, or in England, or South Africa, or Australia, is lockdown and the loneliness of lockdown. How can connecting with animals help us to overcome loneliness?
Animals, of course, first of all, give you lots of unconditional love, and they don't have any judgment. They do not judge you. That's wonderful. They give you love without talking, because very often people talk too much. You have to explain yourself. But animals, you do not have to explain yourself. They do everything non-verbally and with energy. That is so wonderful to get in contact with this phenomenon. Lots of people do not really know about yet, but they get to know it now more and more. In a session with horses, we see that with loneliness, it's also an issue. It's a fear from the past very often, something which you've already had maybe during your childhood, and you're maybe confronted with it again, and you have to deal with it. And as soon as you make this contact with your heart again, you feel you're not alone on your own, and you also feel that you're connected to everybody and everything, because everything in nature reacts to you. And at that moment, of course, the horse reacts to you. It will come to you as soon as you expressed yourself. I feel lonely, because you're allowed to say this to people. You may show your vulnerability. This also makes you stronger. And that is what horses, or even any animal, a dog as well, or whatever animal, will teach you. Be yourself, show your vulnerable sides, express yourself. We even practice this during sessions. Practice just saying how you feel, and people will come more towards you. You will have more connection with others by connecting with yourself and expressing it. You also make the connection with others, and that is also the key to loneliness, just the connection with your heart.
Great information. Now, unlike traditional therapists, so if you went to a traditional therapist, you would an individual would be able to talk about what's bothering them and to use words to say, this is what's bothering me, this is my history, this is what's happened to me in the past. Animals, you know, they don't respond to our words, they respond to our energy. How can um, horses specifically do energy healing? How do the horses shift our energy?
What they do, of course, is showing you first where your blockage is. That is, of course, every time important. You need to heal that blockage and where it comes from. That's always a condition. Once they have done that, you've gone through that process with horses or whatever animal you're with. At that moment, they heal with their energy just by standing next to you. What a horse very often does, it puts you into the full position. That's what they do in nature with their little ones. They put you in a protective position. That means a full position. The person is next to the horse at a neck level. That's at the level of the, let's say, the beginning of their neck, of their head.
Okay, and Alexander, I'm going to interrupt just because I wanted to make sure our audience heard you. So foal, as in little horse, right? Like
Yes.
baby horse.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
what you're saying is, in a therapeutic session, a horse will make you the baby horse.
Exactly. They wrap you in a way, they wrap themselves around you. And that's a beautiful feeling. And I've heard so many clients who just felt so much better and recharged after this contact. They're really, that's what they do. They have got a heart energy, which is so big. They just influence you in your whole being, and it heals people for sure. Yeah.
Now, as we know, throughout history, horses have been used for multiple purposes, whether a mode of transportation, you know, on one person on horseback, or driving a carriage, or plowing the fields. Um, and, are all horses, or corralling cattle. So are all horses healers?
They are. They are. I must say, there are some exceptions. That may be a traumatized horse which has been beaten up, a horse which is very sick. There, we must say, they need the energy to heal themselves. But in general, horses are always from nature, they are healers, because that's what they have learned from nature in a herd, being in a herd, for the survival of the herd. They always heal the other horses, and they also heal other, well, let's say, human beings. That's just the way it is. They always have this connection with the quantum field. So they are, in fact, in a way, a connection between the earth and the higher self of each person, or let's say the quantum field, where all the information is stored, where all the diseases are, where all energies come together. So this is something magic, and you'll have to live it during a session to know what it is. There again, I must say, the verbal part is sometimes difficult.
You know, what's funny about this, there's so many interesting things about what you're saying, Alexander Sitch, but as a medical intuitive healer, of course, most of my clients are humans, but I've also done medical intuitive readings on dogs, cats, horses, goats, donkeys.
Yeah.
And I'll never forget one time, one of my friends, I went to the barn that she owned, and she started asking me to do a medical intuitive reading on the horses. And I'll never forget the farmhand. He was like, wait a minute, Catherine's never been here before. You know, she doesn't know these horses. And my friend said, just listen. And I went around and I did readings on all the horses. And just like people, horses have different personalities. I remember there was a little horse who was a brat. And the little brat horse would, like, torture the dog and, run over the dog and nip at him and stuff. And then there was another horse who was like the chairman of the board. He was in charge of the the stables. And so how can horses different personalities help us to understand our own personality?
What is very interesting, and that again is something, because we're all connected with horses and with other human beings. Every horse, is true what you're saying. They all have different personalities, but they also have different issues. And the interesting is that the horse always chooses in a way, maybe that's the law of life. They choose the person they need to work with. It's like they choose also their own master, their owner. There's always something they need to do with this person. It's either building up a connection, developing heart energy of the person. It can also be that they have to develop something themselves, something they have missed themselves. Maybe they have missed something in their childhood. A horse can have the same sort of problem. Maybe it has had not enough attention during it when the time it was small, and it will probably connect with a human being who also had that sort of problem, or maybe something completely different. But there's always a law that they need each other for a certain healing. The horse heals the person, but very often the person also heals the horse at a certain level, and that is, of course, magic. Yeah.
That's a beautiful message. And I agree with that. Just like in our own lives with other humans, often we come together and we have a soul contract. I'm going to help you, you're going to help me. Together, we're going to resolve these issues. Very, very common. Now, Alexandra Sitch, how many years did you work with just humans in mediation before you started using horses?
Yeah, I worked with just traditional mediation, which is a method on its own, which is very useful in practice. It's really talking, going to the from the points of view of each person, which always creates conflict, to the motive of each person. And people discover their common ground. And once they start listening to each other, it creates lots of goodwill. This I have been doing for about 10 years. And with the horses, it's really an added value, I must say. And I've been doing this now for, let's say, 6 years, 7 years or so. It really gives such an extra dimension to everything, because we're not just in a verbal world. We're not just only in a world of the mind. We need the world of intuition and felt sense as well, because we've got so much body wisdom which has been denied and ignored for so long. Body wisdom which is necessary to heal trauma. It's all in your body. It's stocked in your body. Or as we said, depression, anxieties, it's all stocked in your body. And your body knows so much more than you think. And the horses just translate this. They just translate what is happening inside you. And that is so fascinating.
So my understanding from what you just said is that you worked just with traditional mediation for about 10 years. And then for the past 6 or 7 years, you've added horses. Yeah. What was it specifically? Was there some transformation that occurred that said to you, I've got to start now working with horses? This old way isn't good enough.
Yeah.
What was the catalyst?
That's a very interesting question. That was really because of my inner journey. As I mentioned maybe before, I always work with companies, always on the level of the mind, talking. But I noticed that inner conflicts were always neglected. You could solve the conflicts, but the conflicts always came back. The same patterns always came back between people because their inner conflicts were not solved. And that's where the horses came in. At that moment, we could also solve their inner conflicts, which had an effect on the outside world. And on a personal level, I must say I've always been brain oriented, very much on the intellectual side. But I was, because of health issues, relationship issues, I started to think more and more, what is it? I cannot do everything with the brain. You cannot organize everything with the mind. And I noticed how much I had neglected my intuition, my inside, and had to heal certain wounds, which I've never really looked at before. And this was during this crisis. Everybody's got some time in his life, a certain crisis to deal with. And that's why I started to see there's more than just the brain, there's more than just talking, there's something more. And I've always been around horses, and they always gave me lots of support. At moments I had emotional issues. And once I visited this equine assisted coaching congress, this really gave me the message, well, start working with horses as well to solve conflicts and help people. Not only verbally, but non-verbally as well, in an energetic way. At the same time, I've done animal communication, probably a little bit like you, that animals always want to tell you something on an intuitive level. And this was a wonderful, wonderful extra, wonderful added value to the services I gave already. Yeah.
Yeah, and I agree with you 100% that if you notice that you're having relationship issues, even if you end that particular relationship, if you don't resolve your inner conflicts, you're just gonna recreate that in a new relationship. So what I do when I'm doing my medical intuitive readings, I can read the energy between people. I can show you where you are and are not connecting and explain how that's working, and also identify and clear the issues that you have that are preventing you from having really rewarding relationships. Now, again, Alexander Sitch, you're using horses in your mediation. So do horses want to be our friends? Do they want to be our partners? You mentioned that traditionally in your work, the horse will begin by treating us like a little horse. So how do horses want to be in relationship with humans?
They want, in fact, an equal relationship. That's what they want. So this sort of traditional approach of being the master over the horse, I think that is not of our times anymore. Of course, riding a horse is wonderful, but always respect your horse. They want a relation of equality. And what they are doing during these sessions, they show again, when you give them the freedom to help you, they will help you at the basis of equality, and they will show you also if you have got some trouble or some problem somewhere. They will show you what it is, and they will be non-judgmental. So there's always equality.
Yeah. Now, Alexander Sitch, there's a phrase called a horse whisperer. And a horse whisperer is someone who can observe a horse and understand what their conflicts are and what their problems are. Because just like humans, horses can experience a tremendous amount of trauma in their own lives. Are you a horse whisperer?
I also work like that. It's true. Then, of course, you're taking care of the health of the horse. That's what I did during a training, making contact with the horse on a, you certainly note on a, how do you say, on a emotional and mental level, on a spiritual level, you make contact and you get information from that horse. If he's got problems, some physical problems, where it comes from, you can get so much information once you go into this intuitive level. So I worked with them that way, it's true. But somehow, interesting enough, my mission seemed to be much more, when I got in touch or in contact with such a horse or another animal, could have been a dog or a cat, very often they referred to their owner. They always wanted their owner or their master to be, I don't want to say master, their owner to be, their partner to be happy. That's what they want. And that's what I noticed with animals. They have a mission in their life. They only want, they choose, as I mentioned before, they choose their owner, their human being alive, and they want them to be happy. So when I got in touch with them, there was always a message about their human being, what to do, and a worry they had. For example, a man who was always on his own, and the cat told me, well, he's always on his own. He needs a partner. He needs to go out. I'm so sorry for him. And that was so sweet. They're just there to comfort you, to make you happy.
Yes. You've been listening to the Natural Healing Show for UK Health Radio. I'm your host, Catherine Carrigan, medical intuitive healer, Amazon #1 bestselling author. You can find out more about me and my work at catherinecarrigan.com and unlimitedenergynow.com. While you're there, definitely sign up for my newsletter so you can learn even more about how you can heal yourself naturally. Our guest today has been Alexander Sitch. She is the author of The Universal Language of Nature. And remember that animals are all around us. And I really love Alexandra Sitch's message that they want us to be happy. Thanks so much for listening, and we'll see you next time.